Flamboyant Rainbow.
And I'm Anderson Cooper.
And we're here to talk to you about the American Indian Movement.
Established in 1968, the American Indian Movement began to reverse the policies of the U.S. government repressing Indians as they'd done for hundreds of years. In Congress, there's a subcommittee created for the House on Indian Affairs, headed by James Haley of Florida, who supported Indian rights. For example, he thought Indians should participate more in quote-unquote policy matters, but, quote, the right of self-determination is in the Congress as a representative people, unquote. In the 60s, Haley met many times with President Kennedy and Vice President Johnson and pressed for Indian self-determination and control in transactions over land.
One struggle was over the long-term leasing of Native American land. The natives were only allowed to have 25-year leases, but many banks did not want to invest in 25-year leases as that was not long-term enough for them. This resulted in mass poverty on many Native American reservations. A return to the 19th century 99-year leases was seen as a possible solution, but an Interior Department memo said, a 99-year lease is in the nature of a conveyance of the land. These battles over land had their beginnings in the 1870s, when federal policy often related to wholesale talking, not leases. In the 1950s, many Native Americans believed the leases were too frequently a way for outsiders to control Indian land, and they demanded longer leases so they'd be able to hold on to that land.
We will now go to special field reporter Prancing Buffalo to learn more about the Longest Walks protest.
Okay. Mucho gracias. I am Prancing Buffalo, and we need to discuss the protest that my people led in 1978 and 2008. These protests were the Longest Walk and the Longest Walk 2. When the first Longest Walk occurred, I was just a young boy of 14 summers. However, my father thought that it was an important cause, and he allowed me to join our American Indian Movement leaders for the duration of the entire march. We wish to promote the continued and improved sovereignty of Native American nations and peoples. We wanted to bring attention to the 11 pieces of anti-Indian legislation that were going through Congress. We started the march on Alcatraz Island, and we marched for over 4 months and 3,200 miles, all the while carrying a sacred pipe. Many spiritual leaders joined in our walk, and when we entered D.C., we had thousands of supporters. Some notable non-Indian supporters for our cause were Muhammad Ali and Senator Ted Kennedy. However, President Jimmy Carter refused to meet with our leaders. We were successful in pressuring Congress into passing the American Indian Religious Freedom Act. In 2008, we marched yet again from San Francisco to Washington, D.C. to bring attention to our rights. More than 100 nations had representation in the Longest Walk 2. This walk focused on the protection of ancient and sacred sites and environmental protection. There were 2 routes in this walk, which traversed a combined 26 states and 8,200 miles. We believe that we can save our country and our native homeland, but we must make a change now. The change must come from the upper echelons of the main governing body of this continent. Thank you for listening, and please support the rights of the American Indian.
Thank you, Prancing Buffalo. Now to Equestria Water Bear for a piece on the Wounded Knee trials.
Thank you. I am Equestria Water Bear, here to talk to you today about the conflict and the trials that took place in and near the town of Wounded Knee, South Dakota. On February 27, 1973, almost 200 Oglala Lakota Indians occupied Wounded Knee. The protest followed the failure of an effort of the Oglala Civil Rights Organization to impeach tribal president Richard Wilson, whom they accused of corruption and abuse of opponents. Additionally, protesters attacked the United States government's failure to fulfill these treaties with Indian people and demanded the reopening of treaty negotiations. Oglala and AIM, or American Indian Movement activists, controlled the town for 71 days while the FBI and other law enforcement agencies blocked off the area. The activists chose the site of the 1890 Wounded Knee Massacre for its symbolic value. Both sides were armed and shooting was frequent. Cherokee and Oglala Lakota were killed by shooting in April 1973. Ray Robinson, a civil rights activist who joined the protesters, disappeared during the events and is believed to have been murdered. Due to the damage of houses, no one was able to move back into Wounded Knee until the 1990s. After 1973, the Indians at the Pine Ridge Reservation had an incredibly high rate of internal violence. The murder rate within the reservations was 117 per 100,000. The courts of South Dakota dismissed the charges due to misconduct and did not reopen the cases. Thank you, and back to you.
Fascinating. Now to Giggling Brook, we'll talk about the Peacemaker Center.
Hi, I'm Giggling Brook, reporting on the Peacemaker Center, created by members of the American Indian Movement in 1991. This Peacemaker Center was a spiritual base for members of the AAM. This Peacemaker Center was located in Minneapolis and has such cultural activities such as the Sugar Bush Camp, purification ceremonies, gathering of the Sacred Pipe Sundance, and the On the Red Road celebration, an alcoholic and drug-free New Year's Eve dance. Now the facility also has an athletic and fitness program that includes many sports, and has an educational program that allows students to be tutored and helped in school. Overall, this facility is a great advancement for the American Indian movement and has really helped them a lot.
Thank you, Giggling Brook. As you can see, the Native American people have come a long way from being repressed hundreds of years ago.
They are now a part of our... Sorry, do it one more time.
Yeah, thank you, Giggling Brook. As you can see, the Native Americans have come a long way from being repressed hundreds of years ago.
They are now a large part of our society, having fought for rights in the 60s and 70s.
That concludes our special on the American Indian movement. Until next time, we've been your hosts, Anderson Cooper
And Flamboyant Rainbow. Thank you, and remember, we were here first.
Whoa!